July 3rd Boxomaniacs of the world, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. This is another weekend. We ended combat sports with great fights this weekend, not only in MMA, but of course, our favorite topic to speak about. This is boxing with your man Sports and Tunes and my boy Jose out with Mo Boxing. No problem because it's never a problem to talk about
Never.
boxing.
What up, guys?
And here I will introduce my host of the night. I'm just co-hosting. Always a pleasure to work with my man Jose.
Thanks so much, David. And you said another great weekend of boxing. I know it's a little bit light compared to other weeks. We had Joe Joyce versus Christian Hammer, that was based in the UK and happened pretty early in the day. But that got me thinking about kind of future fights and just future talents. And I'm a big fan of Jaron Boots Ennis. I think he's the goods. Every fight he's been on, he looked impressive, and he's gonna be running the welterweight division. But another one that's also very impressive is Vergil Ortiz Jr. Will be fighting Michael McKinson pretty soon. That's a fight that got postponed. That should have happened, but Ortiz Jr. has also looked like the goods, and one of the guys that's going to be a champion and running that welterweight division too, alongside Boots. So I'm just curious, who you think will ultimately be, the king, the top dog at the welterweight division with those two, Boots or Vergil Ortiz Jr.
Well, like they said it in the past before, it all just depends who's the hungrier warrior wanting greatness. They're both at great ages. I mean, they're very young fighters. They both are up to par at their standards and level. We've seen great fights. Jared Ennis, Boots, gives us great bouts. On the other hand, we have another Mexican American warrior such as Vergil Ortiz Jr., very multi talented person who personally myself I love his guitar skills, and that just shows about how great his hand work is, both in the ring, out of the ring. He can definitely be a good hard fighter for anybody at that welterweight division. I mean, first we have to see these cats that we see in this division nowadays. We have great fighters at welterweight, and you will not disagree. But when these two guys jump in the ring, anything can happen.
Yeah, it's a stacked division. I mean, they currently still have in that division Terence Crawford, Errol Spence, Keith Thurman, just to name a few, and Ugas, who just recently lost his belt, but he's still a top dog in there. And not to mention guys from 140 that may be moving up, like Josh Taylor, maybe Regis Prograis can be at 147 soon. So it's going to be a lively division.
Absolutely.
Welterweight has always been historically kind of the hot division in boxing, so I'm excited for it. And I know in our previous show that I had for the kind of boxing's pound for pound, two of the people on that had Jaron Ennis kind of pretty high in their pound for pound. I think one of them had them number two, and another one kind of had them tied for like number four. So that speaks volumes for the talent that Ennis has. I'm not quite sure yet to put him on the top 10 because he hasn't won a championship belt, but like I said, I'm a big fan, and I think he definitely has the talent to become a champion and be a champion for a long time. But so is Ortiz Jr. So it's tough. I think it'll be one of those runs where they can both reign at the top. They don't necessarily have to be pushed into fighting each other too soon. But ultimately, I mean, I think the fight still got to happen. I think on paper I'm leaning towards Boots, but it's boxing and anything can happen.
I mean, we just have two very different styles of fighting. Virgil, I mean, as you can tell, he's just one guy that can change anything in a fight, and Jared Ennis is just one of those like technical fighters who's just more technical, more defense orientated, waiting for that perfect counter. Anything can happen at this point, but the thing that kind of bums me out is when I join other folks who talk about boxing. When I see a difference, like not being great, which is like when the African American boxers are fighting, they are always going to support the African American boxer. And don't get me
Mm.
wrong, there's a lot of African American boxers that support the Mexican style of boxing. Like they love Canelo. All the African American boxers just love what he does in the ring. They love young upcoming Mexican fighters like Pitbull because of the style of fight that they bring. but they always go more when it comes to like Boots, when it comes to Boo Boo Andre, when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to the Charlo brothers. They're always gonna try to side for that specific fighter, and they're not really gonna give props for the Mexican American or just any Hispanic or Latino or Asian or European style of fighter. They're always gonna go for their own, which is not a problem, not a problem at all, which is totally fine. But here we speak boxing, we speak what's in the ring and not color of the skin.
I agree, and I think in those situations, I wouldn't say they're necessarily boxing fans, but they're more like fans of that fighter. So they either identify themselves because they look just like them, and like I'm gonna root for that fighter myself. But when you're a boxing fan, you don't care about the skin color; you just care about the skill. And I think it's been awesome when Canelo Alvarez gets asked who his favorite fighter is. He says Tank Davis.
Tank,
You know,
yeah, he
it's
just said
Tank.
that in an interview not too long ago, and that kind of goes more to show towards what his feelings are towards his ex brother, ex partner in the training camp, which was Ryan Garcia. He obviously sided more towards Gervonta Tank Davis, and not only Ryan, he also said that not depending on what Oscar Valdez felt. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But hey, if
and
you're showing great showcase in the boxing ring, the only color that matters is the green for fighters nowadays, which is
absolutely.
the money, and that's why they always want to be the A side to get the bigger purses.
Yeah, I mean, just just follow the blueprint. Mayweather, Canelo later how to get paid, and still staying on that tank topic. Like he's been in previous fights rocking out with the no boxing, no life boxing gloves. Showing love to Canelo Alvarez. So I think fighters like that just look at skill, not really color.
Absolutely, and when they come out wearing the sombrero, celebrating the Hispanic heritage or Mexican holidays like Cinco de Mayo, everybody wants to, since they see how it inflicts on our culture, how important those boxing dates are. Now they want to be, like you say, who's the next face of boxing? They want to be the face. They respect that Aztec style, the Mexican fighter warrior style, which they want to be it. And not only you see that in African American boxers, but Golovkin also said, "I have Mexican style." They
Hmm.
all want to be part of the fireworks, and I'm not taking anything away from any other race. I love how the Puerto Rico Mexico wars have gone throughout the boxers in history, and you can tell in great fights that we've gone between those two countries.
Yeah, and each ethnicity brings something to the table. And I know now with the Puerto Rican boxing, they're taking the whole of the when they have the Puerto Rican Day Parade in New York. They're basically fighting around that date. I think it's awesome to see. And now we're starting to see in African American boxers, specifically Jamal Charlo, kind of fight on that June 19th date. The Juneteenth. And unfortunately, his last fight got postponed, but he was targeting that date as well. And I think that's what you kind of need a little more of boxing because right now we got those Cinco de Mayo and the September date. We need,
Absolutely.
we need more of those like specific dates where you're like, oh, this is when Inoue fights. Oh, this is when Jamal Charlo fights.
Absolutely. Yeah, but like I said, folks, please do not sleep on these two fighters. They're both great. I mean, who's going to be up to the heavens in the skill or future face of that weight class? Who knows? We have young guys coming up on the lower divisions who can possibly step it up and be the next welterweights. We've said it before in previous videos. Who can take away anything from a young Inoue? We've seen it with the Pacquiao, who's gone up from being super light to going up to the welterweight class. That would be amazing to see all kinds of races just fighting for the title shots and being the unified champions.
Yeah, true. And I think ultimately at the end of the day, you don't have to bring down another fighter to make sure your fighter's kind of getting his props and his reps. Like, if you think Ennis is going to be number one at welterweight, you don't have to bring down Ortiz. And likewise, if you think Ortiz Jr. is going to be the number one at welterweight, you don't have to knock Ennis. Ultimately, though, let's just enjoy boxing and they'll settle in the ring eventually.
Absolutely, yeah. Like, and you know what was so cool about Vergil Ortiz? He actually got a cool visit this week. He got to see one of his favorite rock and roll artists to sign his guitar.
That's dope.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen some of
So
the videos. He's really into music, huh?
I love watching his lives on Instagram. How he's just rocking on, and he gives you old school rock. He gives you some Nirvana on his guitar, and then he comes up and switches it around, and he shows love to the raza playing some Maná, Muelle de San Blas music. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just good vibes for everyone, and that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to bring that great spirit in boxing and bring it back to the people to see that it's not all going to corruption, and we actually see good bouts nowadays. So before they were like saying, you know what, boxing is so corrupt. If it goes to decision, the A side always most likely wins, and they don't give it to the B side. But apparently, we've been seeing a lot of upsets. A lot of B sides have been the ones to come out and be victorious, and then for one reason or the other, it's hard for them to stay up to par because a lot of fighters are hungry. A lot of more young prospects are working themselves up to the ranks, and it's amazing to see. Just like we see in the, I would say, related sports of combat, the UFC, where it's not always the first, second, third contender. Like out there, they'll actually have the guts to throw the champion against like the number 5 or 6 contender, or someone gets sick or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, we get someone to step it up and step into that fight. And that's great in boxing because we saw that happen with the underdog Andy Reese with the upset he pulled with
That was
AJ
big.
on the first fight. But
That changed his
definitely,
life. Changed his
Boots,
life.
Vergil Ortiz, I have nothing to judge any of those fighters. Only time will tell, and if they face off, remember what we said on this video.
Yeah, absolutely. Just remember what we said. We'll either look like geniuses or we'll have egg on our face. But either way, as long as we get the good fights happening, that's all that matters.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Well, that's all we got on that take. Let us know in the comments who you think is going to be at the top of that welterweight count. Is it Ennis? Is it Ortiz Jr.? We'd like to know. But until next time, make sure you like this video and also subscribe to the channel. And go ahead and follow Sports in Tune, who is rocking with me, and we're going to grow our channels together.
Let's do this, guys. Don't forget, like, subscribe, at Sports and Tunes on Instagram. And if you can't get my page or for whatever reason, I got my partner as a backup at Mo Boxing, no problem. Always great to bring you guys good content, good up-to-date news on this boxing community. Have a
All right.
great weekend. Enjoy time with your families because we only live once and tomorrow's the 4th. So let's get those fireworks going.
Let's get as far as going. Again, always a pleasure, brother. Catch you again real soon.
Absolutely. Have a good
All
one,
right.
brother.
Peace.
Bye-bye.